So I was a bit reluctant to even make this video. I went back and forth in my mind about whether I should even directly address the topic of ChatGPT and other advanced language prediction, generative artificial intelligence. The first reason being that the terrain, the technology is shifting so quickly that I risk saying things in this video that might be outdated come next week. And the other reason being that I'm not at all encouraging you to use these technologies in this class. The way the class is designed, the kind of work that I'm asking you to do, the kind of skills and processes that I'm hoping you'll develop and engage don't require the use of ChatGPT. And you'll have plenty of opportunities to use those applications in other moments of your life. It's just not required or expected or encouraged in this class. And in fact, if you remember the syllabus statement, my policy in this course is that if you do use it, it should only be limited to the initial research stages for helping you discover topics, get up to speed on a topic, kind of like you would use an encyclopedia or Wikipedia or Google search. It can help you find search terms and ideas to then explore and hopefully discover, published quality, as we talked about in previous videos, primary and secondary source information. So it can serve as a starting point, but it is not itself a credible source of information to support academic claims. So you'll need to verify all the fact claims that you're making in your speech with reliable sources. In other words, you should avoid copying, transcribing, paraphrasing, anything from ChatGPT. And I don't want you to use ChatGPT to do any of the composition process of your speech. You should be writing, and I want you to speak in your own voice. When I use ChatGPT to kind of edit my work, it takes some of the life out of it, and it writes in a way that I don't actually talk. And it writes in a style that I don't actually write in. So it can eliminate your own unique voice, and I want you to use that voice in this class. Regardless, you need to, in your speeches, cite and support your information, your claims in your speeches using paraphrasing and quotes from credible primary and secondary sources of information. And ChatGPT, as it is right now, it can maybe help you discover other sources, but it shouldn't be relied upon as it's not a primary source of information. It's questionable, its quality as a secondary source of information. I would call it more like a tertiary source of information. So any speech that's relying on ChatGPT beyond the initial research process could potentially get a 0, right? And so I'm available to kind of guide you through this. If you have questions about using AI, you could come talk to me. If in doubt, please reach out. But generally, using AI to generate speech content without citing sources to back up that content using MLA format will result in a 0. At the very least, it's going to probably waste both of our time, as I'm going to want to potentially talk to you and have you explain to me, what you're doing, and to show me that this is your own original thinking about the sources that you're using in your speeches. And it could result in even a student code of conduct violation, which would be a real pain for both of us. So I'm not encouraging you to use ChatGPT, and in fact, I'm warning you against it. It's not necessary for this course. But what is it? It's a thing out there in the world we should all know about, and you might use it in other applications in your life. Well, it's a kind of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence isn't a new thing. If you're 20 years old, it's been around your whole life. It's just that it used to be single applications. It used to be like the reminders in your calendar. That was an artificial intelligence. The predictive text in your text messaging that's guessing the next word, that was a type of artificial intelligence. When Spotify or Apple Music recommends what music it thinks you like, that was an artificial intelligence application. It's just that we had hundreds and hundreds of different small applications, and each of them had their own function. The big difference now is that we have one kind of giant robot brain, that's this thing here in the middle, that's doing a whole bunch of different tasks. So all of the tasks that used to be farmed out to a bunch of different programs are now being done by one single program, and it was created using algorithms, and this is a very kind of basic look at this, but machine learning, is what was used to create this thing. And what they did is they being programmers or the creators of the generative AI, fed a computer program, basically a big algorithm. They fed it a bunch of data. That algorithm analyzed that data and created kind of a giant mathematical formulation based on all the data that gets fed into it. It's then trying to guess what would be a likely output. So if you give it this prompt, if you ask it to do a certain task, it's going to guess what's the most likely outcome, what's the most likely output based on all the information that it has analyzed. And it's kind of like a black box, right? And what do I mean by that? You can't look into it. The programmers don't really know what the generative, what the robot is doing, and the robot doesn't know what the robot is doing. It's essentially created a mathematical equation that says, if I see X, Y together, most likely thing to come next is Z, right? And it does that to the millionth degree, and it produces these rather sophisticated outputs that are dazzling, that give us the illusion of a working mind, a human mind, right? So it sounds like a human, it acts like a human, but how it's working is not like a real brain, not like a real mind. It's a very complex algorithm, right? That's producing an output that's ultimately a guess, right, of what it thinks is going to be the best guess based on the prompt that you put into it. Okay, real elementary, quick and dirty explanation of what it is. All right, it comes with some drawbacks. One is that because it's being developed, because it's using machine learning to create itself, all of the biases of the data that are fed into it could be reflected in whatever it puts out. So, for example, some of the early artificial intelligence, they would scrape the data of Reddit, Reddit.com, the website. Has a bunch of user-generated content. Millions and millions of people have created information and put it up onto Reddit. Those are people with certain experiences, certain identities, certain biases. If Reddit has, let's say, majority middle-class people on it, potentially that middle-class bias is in the content that's created on Reddit, you feed it into the AI, the AI is going to have a middle class attitude potentially, And so the biases that get fed into the machine could be produced by the machine. And we saw this in some of the earliest versions of this that would express, for example, racist attitudes or sexist attitudes. So there's certain blind spots potentially because it's programmed based on a particular set of data. So there's potentially biases written into the machine, and it's going to produce it as if it's objective, and it's really not, right? It's based on real data created by real human beings, but it's kind of unaware of what it's doing with it. So it can produce biases, and it has in the past. And the companies that create these things and run these things, they're trying to create safeguards around them so that they don't produce, for example, racist speech, but it's possible. They also hallucinate. They fabricate information that's not verifiable or true, right? And so it will seem like, this is a historical fact or something, and then you go to look it up and you can't really verify it with real sources of information. It's called a hallucination. And again, they're trying to create safeguards around this to limit its hallucinations. But we don't necessarily know if ChatGPT is making an assertion, a claim of fact, whether or not that's true, right? It's generating a new piece of information. It's not going back into a database, looking at the information, citing that information, and then bringing it forward like traditional research. It's guessing. It's generating something that theoretically never existed before, and it's hoping that guess is accurate, right? And in that process, it can potentially hallucinate. And I've seen this in my own interactions with ChatGPT. I was testing it, for example, and I was asking it about the Magna Carta. I had just listened to a lecture on the Magna Carta, so I had all this kind of trivia in my head, and I knew that the Magna Carta, which is the basis of the tradition of the Western justice system, things like habeas corpus and like a quick trial, being able to see the charges that are against you. That's all in the Magna Carta. That's the most popular thing in the Magna Carta. And that's the thing that gets mentioned the most in the data that got put into ChatGPT. But some of the more trivial information about the Magna Carta might not have been put in the ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT, does the Magna Carta name specific individuals? And it said no. The Magna Carta talks about the people generally, but it doesn't name any particular individuals. Well, I knew that was wrong, that in fact the authors of the Magna Carta called out, in a kind of petty, almost like hate book, burn book kind of way, particular dukes that they didn't like. They put them in the Magna Carta, and ChatGPT didn't know that, at least on the first response that it gave me. And then I called ChatGPT out. I said, you're wrong. And ChatGPT backtracked and said, oh yeah, you're right, but it still couldn't name the particular individuals that are named in the Magna Carta. So there's some minutia, there's some flattening of information that occurs if you're feeding it kind of the most basic data, the most common data. Some of the particularities are going to get lost or be unable to be reproduced by it. So it hallucinates, it gets things wrong, and when you press it, it will backtrack, and it will backtrack. You can even get it to second guess information that is true by telling it it's not true, and it'll apologize. So, it's not a traditional form of research. Like I said, it's guessing. and it's doing a damn good job of guessing half the time, more than half the time. Another key problem of it is if you're using it, to do your work, you're diminishing your own learning experience, and you're potentially offshoring your own critical thinking skills, and you're kind of robbing yourself of the traditional approach to learning and education that we're trying to create here at a university. Okay, sorry that keeps freezing up. It's a little annoying to me. So there's some key problems to its use, and you really should learn first before you have some robot. If you were going to the gym and you sent a robot to go lift the weights for you, be effective, be easy, but you're not going to gain any of your own muscle. Okay, so what are some ethical ways to use AI if you were to use it for your academic work? Brainstorming, as I mentioned, the initial process, kind of discovering topics, using it to find key terms, using it to find better sources, good sources of information. You can use it like you would use an advisor, like talking to a librarian or a teacher. You can ask it questions about your work and get some feedback on your work. The upside of that is it's super fast, it's easily accessible, and it's going to produce a lot of good quality ideas for you to consider and think about, and then hopefully take and utilize in the more traditional research process. The downsides, of course, are the temptation to cheat or get lazy. Just have ChatGPT write your entire speech. That would be cheating in this class. It could produce the lowest common denominator, right? The most easily available, low-hanging fruit kind of information. It could rob you of some of the serendipity that happens when you read things, when you kind of surf the web, as we used to call it, and discover things along the way by actually taking the steps. If you're waiting until the last minute, you're probably getting some basic stuff, and you're robbing yourself of some interesting discoveries. And then sometimes you have to, it requires you, if you're going to have sources, that I can look up and find myself. If ChatGPT, I can't look to see what you're looking at on ChatGPT. So I want you to have a source that I can find, a primary or secondary source of information. If you're using information that you got from ChatGPT, then you're going to have to reverse engineer that and find sources to back that up. So you can end up having to do more work potentially in that case. You can use ChatGPT to improve the readability of your content, to kind of check your grammar. The Word documents do this on their own, so I feel like you'd be fine in this class to just use the tools, the basic artificial intelligence tools that are in Word already. The upside of this is it's efficient, it's thorough, it's quick at doing that editing. The downside is when you have it kind of rework all of your writing, it could strip your own voice out of the writing. And I want you to write in your own voice. I want you to speak. Oh, that's annoying. In your own voice. And so every time I've used ChatGPT to kind of edit, sometimes it flattens, it replaces my voice with this like bland kind of voice of a bureaucrat, right? Also, it could potentially lead you to cheat, right? To be tempted to just have it do all your thinking, have it do all your writing, have it create your whole speech, and then you're going to fail to develop certain basic skills. You're going to diminish your own critical thinking. A big one for us is that it could trip AI detection. So if you're having it rewrite your entire speech, taking your writing and then turning it into kind of something else, it could end up tripping the AI detection. And then I won't know, was this a speech that was completely produced by artificial intelligence, or is it just editing the sentences? So I don't recommend that you use it to edit your work. It's not necessary for this class, and it could cause us both some trouble. So just beware of using it to improve the readability. I don't think it's necessary for this class. I think all of you have the writing skills that I'm looking for to be able to do this work. And if you look at how I evaluate your outlines, grammar is only a small portion of your grade, and it's very lax in terms of how I am assessing your grammar. Basically, I'm just saying, can I read it without difficulty? So if you're writing in, total chicken scratch garbage, that I can't like physically read it, okay, that's a problem. But I would say all of you who are able to be in this college course have the basic editing skills to do just fine writing your outlines for my evaluation purposes. I'm not going through your outlines with a fine-tooth comb. It's just a record to help me evaluate your spoken presentation a little more accurately and to be able to see how you're doing your work. Okay, so I'm not worried about whether you're writing completely 100% error-free. Unethical use, this is really what you should pay attention to and think about when you're doing your work in this class. If you are claiming ideas or writing that was generated by AI as your own, that's cheating. That's unethical, right? And that's not what I want you to do in this course. So copying and pasting directly from one of these artificial intelligence bots into your outline is unethical and considered cheating. Okay, so I want you to do your original paraphrasing, and if you're copying and pasting something, it should be quotes from a primary source or a secondary source that you can cite in the work. And remember, I don't want you to use ChatGPT as a source of information. Making fact claims beyond common knowledge without sources is unethical. So common knowledge are things like, Thanksgiving is held on the fourth Thursday in November. Jesus Christ is an important religious figure. Oscar Goodman was once the mayor of Las Vegas. It's kind of readily available, widely established facts that you would see across multiple sources that are easy to find. Common knowledge, right? Specific data points, specific kind of nuanced information, specific statistical information. All of those things need to be cited from sources. So if ChatGPT is telling you, 70% of Americans do this, well, what's the source that ChatGPT is pulling it from? If it's just generating that based on a guess, it's not based on any particular primary source. If ChatGPT has a primary source for that, you can use the information ChatGPT gives you, go find that source. So don't use ChatGPT to make claims that you can't back up. Don't use ChatGPT to fabricate sources that don't actually exist, right? So I want you to have actual sources for your speeches. So don't use it to create a source that's not real. And then again, citing sources that you do not have and have not read is unethical in this class and in other classes, really. Here's some guidelines for you that I want you to remember. Whatever goes in your speech, right? The sources on your works cited page that you're using in your in-text citations to back up the claims that you're making and to support the claims that you're making in your speech, you should possess those things, right? You should own it. You should have borrowed it from the library. You should have it on file. You should have a link to the thing online. You need to be able to show me that you had it, you possessed it, you held it in your pretty little hands, right? If all you have is the abstract of a whole article, that doesn't count, right? The abstract is a tertiary source of information. You need to get the article itself, and you need to read the article itself. So if I ask you for the source that you're citing in your speech, you should be able to give me access to it. I may, in fact, ask you to send it to me. I want to see, is what you're saying in the speech actually from that source. So I want to be able to retrieve these things and verify the information that you're putting into your outlines. And ChatGPT could short circuit that whole process, and I won't be able to retrieve those facts and find them, and so you will lose points on that, right? And you might get a 0 on the entire assignment because of that. So be able to show your work, keep track of the work you're doing along the way. That's always a good practice. If you took notes, save those notes. If you highlighted the text, show in there where you highlighted the text. You left comments in the text. Did you create an annotated bibliography? Be able to show me that stuff. In general, you should be able to discuss your process and your knowledge of your sources. So I should be able to ask you, what did you do? And you should be able to explain these things using your own understanding of them, right? Your own familiarity with the things that you're talking about in your speeches. So that might happen. I might be asking you to kind of show your work. Tell me, what did you do? And it would be better if you just did it the ethical way to begin with, rather than having to try to lie to me about it while I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, so remember, not asking you to use these things, and they come with a lot of caveats and a lot of issues and a lot of problems. They're definitely very powerful tools, and you're encouraged to use them in your life. It's just not expected and needed to do the things I'm asking you to do in this course. Thank you very much.